allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If I could have someone move the agenda table, please. Moved by Vice President Moore, second by Ms. Flores. Any additions or corrections to the agenda? Seeing none, all is in favor? That passes 8-0. Our seal of biliteracy recognition.
Yeah.
Shauna?
Come on up, guys. Hello, my name is Shauna Sweet. I'm from the Department of World Languages, and we're here to talk about the New York State Seal of Biliteracy and the Puerto Rican Hispanic Youth Leadership Institute, also known as PRILI. Okay, who's up first? Guys, gotta get a little closer. Who's up first? That's okay.
So, can you guys hear me? Okay. So first we'll start with the New York State Seal of Biliteracy. Hi, my name is Mario. I'm from the Dominican Republic and I go to Olympia. Hola, mi nombre es Mario. Yo estudio español en Olympia y soy dominicano.
Buonasera, mi chiamo Elvira, frequento Athena e sto studiando l'italiano.
Ciao, mi chiamo Maria, frequento Athena e studio italiano.
Hola, me llamo Muchima Menengu. Yo voy a Athena, estudio español.
Hola, me llamo Micael Peña, soy dominicano y mi escuela es Athena.
Hola, me llamo Jonathan y yo estudio español y yo voy a Olympia.
Hola, mi nombre es Isamar Escalante Candelario, soy de Puerto Rico y voy a Arcadia.
Hi, my name is Kamai and I go to Greece, Arcadia studying Spanish.
Hi, my name is Harkirat Singh and I'm from Varasi and I speak Punjabi.
What is the Seal of Biliteracy? The NYSSB recognizes high school graduates who have attained a high level of proficiency in English and one or more world languages. The NYSSB takes the form of a seal on the student's diploma, a medallion worn at graduation, and is included on the student's high school transcript.
Students can earn the Seal of Biliteracy for a language they learned in school or a language they speak at home or in the community. Successful candidates will earn 3 points in English, 3 points in each world language from a points matrix, which includes course grades, national and state exams, transcripts, and culminating projects.
Our current state. This year, Greece Central School District is offering the Seal of Biliteracy for the 7th time. 45 students are working towards the Seal of Biliteracy in 11 languages: Arabic, ASL, French, Italian, Karen, Lingala, Mandarin Chinese, Portuguese, Punjabi, Spanish, and Vietnamese.
Hola, soy Tracy Fishman. Soy una maestra de inglés aquí en Greece. My name is Tracy Fishman. I'm a teacher here in Greece Central School District. And on Friday, we have a really important day because here we are going to be having our Seal of Biliteracy presentations. It's our first annual district-wide event. And we're really excited to welcome some of our teachers and admin and staff from around the district and even some community members who are going to be here to watch and to rate the presentations. So we're really looking forward to that, and we'll have results around graduation time.
Seal of Biliteracy is special for me because I'm representing my language, and I'm also celebrating for English because it took me learn English like 4 years.
Now we will talk about the Puerto Rican Hispanic Youth Leadership Institute.
Thank you. That's all right. There we go. Okay, want to introduce yourself?
I'm Aulani and I go to Olympia.
I'm Jonathan. I also go to Olympia.
And I'm Meek and I go to Athena.
So, some quick facts about Prilai. Late Assemblyman Angelo de Toro created the Institute for High School Students for Hispanic and Latino Descent. The Angelo de Toro takes place every year in Albany. This program has been in existence for 30 years. This is a collaborative effort of many New York State groups, listed right below. The program is no cost to students or school districts.
Okay, so some of the goals of the Angelo del Toro Institute is so that we can gain an understanding of the legislative process here in New York, also to develop certain leadership skills, to gain an understanding of being a responsible citizen, create some opportunities to interact with positive role models, and also to promote dialogue about issues concerning our Hispanic community.
And Prilai consists of 30 hours of training, which these students completed before they went to Albany, and then they had a weekend in Albany as well.
Some benefits include community service hours, networking, a trip to Albany, building leadership, and much more.
Okay, I have to read this because they have a lot of awards here. So Aulani was voted to represent the Monroe delegation in the specialty role as the Republican clerk at the mock assembly. Jonathan, back here, was voted to represent the Monroe delegation as outstanding delegate and earned the Somos Scholarship. And Mikael, behind me, was the alternate for moderator at student recognition dinner and outstanding delegate and earned the Somos Scholarship as well.
Overall, this leadership-based program primarily taught me about our voice, more importantly, about the powerful impact we can have on our road as leaders, despite Hispanics being a minority. Our vibrant culture is what connects each and every one of us and makes me know that I do belong. Looking back at the trainings and time in Albany, I have a more fundamental knowledge of our legislative process and government, the debates on bills that correspond to everyday life, including social media literacy standards, and even districts having diversity officers. Overall, Prilai has given me both leadership and public speaking skills that I will incorporate in my life, as I have already had meaningful conversations with many leaders and elected officials that have shaped my mindset today.
Thank you for this time, and I just want to acknowledge there's teachers, counselors, and some of our Arbor specialists from Monroe 2 BOCES who've been instrumental. If you could just stand, and we can thank you for supporting this work. Thank you. All right, we're done.
Sean, I'm going to have all the students come up out front here. We're going to do a picture with the board if you don't mind.
Okay, great. Get on up there, guys. Who spoke Spanish to Howard?
You guys are welcome if you'd like. You're more than welcome to stay, but if you have other things that you would rather be doing this evening, now would be a good time to leave if you'd like. It's up to you. I mean, I'm happy to have you stay, but if you want to take off, I get it. I'd probably leave.
If you're going, you can follow me. I'll take you to the room.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for coming. All right. Moving on to staffing. Can I have somebody move staffing to the table, please? Moved by Mr. Sawicki, seconded by Ms. Farmer. Any comments, questions, or concerns on staffing? Seeing none, all those in favor? That passes 8-0. We'll start with, do you want to start with Jeremy and then you?
Sure. Well, I'm doing both.
Oh, okay. Let him go first. He's got one.
Oh, I apologize. Sorry.
All right, good evening.
Can I write
I
that
would
down?
like to start by congratulating Miss Ashley Day Marino as the acting assistant principal at Holmes Road. Ashley is a Ashley is a proud graduate of the Greece Central School District and started her teaching career in 2011 in Greece as an ENL teacher at the secondary level. She worked at Apollo, Athena, and Olympia, where she co-taught across several different content areas. Ashley went to St. John Fisher College for her master's degree in educational leadership. After completing her program, Ashley worked as an assistant principal within Greece and in neighboring districts. Also, she was the assistant director of a local elementary charter school. She returned to her alma mater in 2020 as a fifth grade teacher. Currently, she is teaching kindergarten in an integrated co-taught classroom at the Early Learning Center. Ashley's heart is in Greece, and she is grateful to be back home. She is eager to learn about the Holmes Road School community and join the team there in May. Congratulations, Ashley.
All right, Superintendent Groutman, you're up.
Great. I have the honor of sharing with you about two important appointments that we just made. The first I will start with is Jeremy Smalling as our Deputy Superintendent here in Greece. So after teaching at the elementary in Rochester City School District and West Irondequoit, Jeremy came to the Greece Central School District in 2005 as an administrative intern at Long Ridge Elementary. Over the next 10 years, Jeremy remained at Long Ridge, where he was promoted to assistant principal and then principal in 2010. In 2015, Jeremy was promoted to the district turnaround principal and supported building leaders with their continuous school improvement process and professional development. The following year, Jeremy became the Director of Student Services and School Improvement. As director, Jeremy worked extensively with teachers, building and district leaders, and members of the Superintendent's Cabinet to ensure coherence in the areas of social-emotional learning, response to intervention, and school improvement. In July 2019, Jeremy began supporting the Department of Human Resources, and in January of 2020, he was appointed Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources. Quite a history. As the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, Jeremy has worked to develop trusting relationships with all of our unions and employees across the district. He's worked to improve district operations by improving systems and efficiencies, and has developed equitable hiring and retention practices. In each step along his journey, Jeremy has deepened his understanding of systems and impacts that systems have on the organization as a whole. As the Deputy Superintendent of School, Jeremy is looking forward to continuing his support with the continuous school improvement process and empowering staff to collaborate with all stakeholders to meet the needs of our students in the Greece community. Outside of the workday, Jeremy and his wife Susan enjoy spending time with their two children, Alexia and Owen. Alexia is a senior in West Irondequoit and will be attending Eastern Michigan University next year and playing lacrosse. Owen is a freshman and keeps them busy all year round playing football, wrestling, and lacrosse. Jeremy would like to thank his family for all of their support and flexibility over the years. The majority of his time is spent taking them to their different sporting events and traveling for lacrosse over the summer and fall. Additionally, they're always looking forward to their annual summer vacation in the Adirondack Mountains. Congratulations, Jeremy. Thank you for your continued support and leadership to our district. Welcome. And the next appointment that I'm proud to share with you is Ms. Gina Larson for Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. Gina was hired in July 2004 as an assistant principal at the Arcadia High School. She was then promoted to principal at Arcadia in 2015 and has been serving as the Executive Director of Human Resources since July 2021. Since joining the Human Resources team, she's worked with all 6 union groups through labor management meetings and negotiations. She's proud to work on a team that honors relationships and integrity and works to find common ground no matter what the issue is. Additionally, she works daily with building administrators, district staff, and individual employees on issues ranging from hiring to contract language to supporting student needs. She loves that each day brings a new puzzle and each solution brings a new relationship. Gina is proud of the work that the Department of Human Resources does on a daily basis to provide support, benefits, and strong collective bargaining agreements to our employees. Gina is excited to continue to lead the Department of Human Resources in this new role. She's grateful to be part of so many opportunities and is looking forward to continuing to find ways to use her institutional and leadership experience, as well as her knowledge of labor relations, to continue to make improvements to the department. As she begins her 20th year in Greece, she looks forward to continuing to build new relationships with our community, or within our community. In her spare time, Gina likes to spend time with her family. She has a wonderful husband, Chris, and 2 stepchildren, Maddie and Jason, and the best dog ever, Rousey. She has 3 incredible sisters in Buffalo and an amazing dad in Cleveland who thankfully have always been supportive of her choice to leave her hometown and move to Greece for work. There are many trips down the 90 to make sure that they remain as connected as possible. Her family is her constant reminder that life should be full of love and laughter. Congratulations, Gina.
If you guys do a picture. Picture time. I mean, how about we do it the whole new look cabinet? So all you guys, the new look cabinet. Just because it irritates Val. All right, item 2.02, the Ag Accept MOAs. Can I have somebody move those to the table, please? Moved by Mr. Swicky, seconded by Mrs. Farmer. Any comments, questions, concerns on those? Seeing none, all is in favor. That passes 8-0. Moving on to 4.01, the 23-24 budget presentation. Superintendent Groutman.
So I think all the poor mental health people who have like the problem of the bad agenda placement in terms of like you're coming second. So I'm sorry, but you'll have to learn about the budget. We thought you were here for us. So let me just start by saying thank you for being here and for your attention this evening as I share the budget proposal for the 2023-24 school year. I promise to the board, we heard this presentation last week. I will abbreviate it a bit, but I do want to make sure that I go through just to be as thorough as possible the second time around, since our hope tonight is to bring this to adoption. I would like to just formally thank, before I get started, the Budget Department, including Romeo Kalili and Janine Cushman, who've done incredible work along with our whole department. I would also give a shout out tonight, and I should have done it the other night, to Laurel Hayden, who from a communications perspective has been on the inner workings of about 25 different documents and trying to help us to figure out ways to communicate and get a lot of information out to a lot of different constituents. So huge thanks to her. We work incredibly hard to listen, get feedback, and allocate dollars thoughtfully and to hopefully have them make the greatest impact possible. And as many of you know, we've been talking about the budget for months. So this is a process that starts. It starts months ago, and we basically present small pieces throughout to the point of this sort of culminating event. We're interested just to bring it all together and hopefully adopt. So this is just a reminder. Obviously, the vote is on May 16th. The last time I went through this, and I won't go through this in as much detail, I talked about the fact that we have a budget development process. This process is important. It's one that we take really seriously, starting with assessing funding, identifying priorities, investigating economies, actually developing the budget itself line by line, and then ongoing evaluation. So I will briefly go into that a little bit further in the presentation. What I shared the last time as well was a bit of context. So before I got into the process, I wanted to make sure that people did have context around some of the conditions that matter during budget development. Enrollment is one of them because it matters in that it impacts the aid we get, it impacts the staffing that we can keep, it impacts a lot of different components. So it's a key sort of lever within this process. And on top of that, the sort of demographic needs that we have in this district matter. There are sometimes when people say to me, Kathy, if enrollment has gone down in Greece, why does the budget go up? Which is a great question. And the thing that I want to point out is this slide really says a lot. Our enrollment is down minus 5.6% over the last 5 years. So this is since 1819. But what you can see in this is our English language learners have gone up. Our special education needs have gone up. Our homeless students have gone up, and the amount of students receiving free and reduced meals has gone up considerably. So the idea and the point to make there is that with increased need comes increased supports and services that we are providing in schools for our students. So you'd expect that number to go up. Assessing funding, like I mentioned before, is really that stage that we start with. And that's really looking, in that December timeframe where we do an initial rollover, we look at our revenues, we look at the foundation aid and aid that we're going to be getting from the state, and we're just determining at that point if there's a surplus or a gap. I have shared happily that this year and the last couple of years we have seen a surplus, which is rare, but because we got the dollars from the state. We had basically been in budget crisis for years, and many of you sitting in the audience can attest to the fact that for years we were cutting and cutting and cutting, and we had very little that we were running our buildings with in terms of supports. We then go on to identify priorities, which in this case you can see here is really looking at right-sizing programs to address the academic and behavioral needs of our kids. We know the pandemic has had impact. We know we have work to do in both of those arenas, but wanting to make sure that we prioritize that with dollars and supports within this budget is important, as well as our continued focus on school safety, wellness, the social emotional needs of our students, and culturally responsive education. And then lastly, looking at continuing to support expanded learning opportunities, particularly extracurricular and things over our breaks and summer. We heard loud and clear from parents. We know that kids really attached to that in terms of having a sense of belonging and helping with learning. So we want to make sure that that's in the budget as well. And then we move on to investigate economies, where we're looking at really just trying to, do we need positions? Can we replace them at a lower cost? Are we making sure that we're doing the best job as far as like staffing to enrollment so that we're not being wasteful and that we're being really efficient? Making sure that we're looking at any other alternative funding sources, whether that be grants or BOCES, any sort of partnerships that can help us. We're looking at doing that to save money. And then also just continuing to work on spending less, really reviewing every contracted service and line item that we have to see if there's anywhere that we can reduce or save. And then in the last part, it's really just that idea of developing the budget. And like I mentioned, we are really making sure every single thing that we say yes to that is in that budget is really connected into one of our commitments. So you can see in terms of commitment one, this is really the dollars that are being put towards igniting learning. So this is the academic sort of domain, if you can think about it in that way. The gist of this is there's a ton of programs and things that we know matter for students, things like AVID, things like Leader in Me. Those are programs, and those are often, there's dollars associated with that, as well as people. We've continued to support and add to counseling supports. We have added full-day kindergarten, or pre-K, sorry, and we've also added language development teachers to really sort of hit on and make our early learning more robust, because we know that that matters in terms of third grade reading and closing gaps. That's all in this budget. Additionally, there is increased mental health supports and behavioral support positions. There is positions like math and ELA intervention to address learning loss. There's also dollars allocated in here for curriculum work, specifically that's going on with our curriculum cycles, particularly with ELA. And then also with that, there's training, but I'll hit on that on another slide. And then also safety and security. So there's dollars in this. We struggled with which commitment to put it under because it kind of fits under a lot. But there are significant dollars in here to support safety and security, ranging from 35 security guards to 2 of our school resource or school safety officers, to Steve's position as our director of security, to infrastructure, to apps and things that we've used for training. So there's a lot of dollars associated with that, as well as some contracted services. So you can see there's people and there's program all in here. In terms of cultivating trust, the biggest areas here that really require dollars, this first kind of bullet is talking about the idea that we are promoting positive school culture and prioritizing student and staff wellness. That is also connected to many of the programs. So there's some overlap in these areas, because when we're talking about something like Leader in Me or AVID, that really is promoting school culture. But that's not all. We also have things like coaching in terms of supporting our teachers. We have like a whole mindfulness team that's there to help promote positive culture and do work that's sort of targeting that. We're continuing to expand our community schools model. We're continuing to really work on partnering with community agencies or organizations to increase programs and services for students. So that could be our universities, like our Nazareth, the grant that we got federally, where we're going to be getting social workers, but it also could be something like the United Way, which is helping to support us in terms of their funding the Navigation Center. So one of the things that you heard last week with community schools is those partnerships continue to grow and really have, with that, in some cases, there might be slight cost on our part, maybe through BOCES or so on, but what we're getting in return is really significant. And then continuing to promote outreach with our students in terms of service. So we talk a lot about the idea of prioritizing. Well, we ask for a lot from our community. How do we continue to give back? And what are we promoting with our students in terms of service out in the community? And there was a ton of examples of that that I talked about last week. And lastly, the idea of engaging stakeholders in two-way communication, and the fact that if we're going to be surveying people, if we're going to be using thought exchange, if we're going to be hosting focus groups, there's time and there's money associated with those efforts that is important to note. And that's important to us as far as building trust. And lastly, the area or the commitment in terms of expanding opportunity is really looking at the lion's share of the dollars here are really what we put into maintaining high quality instruction and course offerings. Specifically, we have over 70 courses that can earn students college credit, but we have tons that we offer. It's a huge point of pride for us as far as being able to put a course catalog in front of students and allow for so much choice. and opportunity, and that includes electives at college-bearing courses as well as CTE pathways that are noted there. We have money involved in refining our hiring practices. So our HR department has put great emphasis on revamping hiring practices and really looking at employee retention, as well as making sure that we have really robust professional development for all the folks that we hire. We have over 400 offerings for our staff. That's huge. That's actually up 70 from last year. So we do a lot to make sure that people are getting what they need and that they're energized by their work. Continuing to realize savings in terms of retiree replacement is something that's just more of a practice that we do. And then also on this slide, we mentioned the fact that we've changed allocations and increased allocations to the schools. So that money is almost $1 million that we've taken and distributed among schools so that their building budgets are a little bit more. We haven't done that in a long time, and we know that there's increased need at the school, and they have some autonomy in terms of how to be able to use that. Lastly, I would say that step 5 is looking at ongoing evaluation and just this idea that we continue to review this all year long and make adjustments as necessary, and also make notes so that we're more informed, each time we come back to the table to actually develop a budget. We also have a budget advisory committee that starts to meet generally in December, and we're always looking for community members to join us for that. That is a way that Romeo really brings people together to sort of get thoughts and ideas and run budget questions through like a community lens and from a different perspective. And it's been really helpful for us in terms of putting forward a responsible budget. And with that, I'll turn it over to Romeo to give the more specifics, the financial summary.
Thank you, Kathy. Good evening, everyone. As Kathy had mentioned, it's basically the same slides as we saw last week, so I won't go into as much detail, but if there are questions, please let me know. As you can see on the first bullet, as of today, we still do not have a state budget. My understanding is another extender was passed last evening, and the due date for the budget numbers to come out is this Thursday, April 20th. If we adopt the budget this evening, we don't believe it would harm us in any way. Whatever adjustments that we see on the state aid side, which is primarily half of our revenues, as long as it's not a very significant change, we should be able to adjust for that on the revenue side, so we're not too worried unless that number is in the millions and something that we were expecting doesn't come in. But if it's a few $100,000, we can make that adjustment. So we're not worried so much about adopting the budget and having the state budget come out on Thursday. We believe we'll still be good at the numbers that we're showing everyone last week and this evening. Okay. However, there are some items in the budget that we are anxiously waiting for. One is the presumption and expectation that we'll get the full foundation aid for next year. 2 is universal free meals. Sounds like that is expected and should be coming through for us for next year and hopefully permanently. Expansion of full-day pre-K, some additional funds being allotted towards that. And then another one, not so much money related, but the extension of the income waiver for retirees through June of '24, which should help us in other districts with some staffing issues for retirees who then will not need to be capped at the $35,000 or $36,000, at least for another year, to help with the staffing shortage. This is the spreadsheet we would use to show what the budget from the legislature would be under column 6. At this point in time, we made some adjustments to the executive state aid, which is column 2. We did that back in January or February. The number we are using at the current time is the number in column number 5, which is $152.3 million for state aid, and that includes foundation aid as well as all of our expense-based aids. Talking about the foundation aid is the funds that we get per pupil for a sound basic education for each of our students. And what you see here is kind of where we've been since about 2007 and 8. You can see we were flat for a number of years between 08, 09, and 13, 14, even going into 15, 16. Those were the years, too, that we had gap elimination and made a lot of cuts to the budget and lost a lot of positions that we have since restored to the budget with the last 3 years worth of revenue increase. But you'll see starting in 21, 22, we received $9 million more in foundation aid as promised. In 22, 23, we received another $15 or $16 million more in foundation aid as promised. And the green bar is the $19 million that is showing on the governor's run is our foundation aid increase for the next year. And one point to make on foundation, these increases, which are significant because they take us from about what we've been in the past, $63 million to $107 million. That's if the foundation aid formula stays in play, that's a permanent increase year after year after year for us. Okay? So it's significant, and we're expecting that that will take place. As we look at our revenues here, budgeted or adopted revenue from the current year compared to our proposed revenues for this year, we're looking to increase our revenues by just about $25 million. Of that $25 million, $22.8 million, or 91% of it, of that $25 million increase, is due to state aid. Okay, so it's not that we've kind of increased the expense side and trying to figure out how to get the revenue for it. We've been given a revenue that has increased our state aid by 91%, or 91% of the total. And you can see the other numbers here. On the expense side, we run the figures by function and by object. You can see on this slide general support and how much we spend in instruction for pupil transportation, community services, and undistributed. Again, the budget-to-budget increase of about $25 million, about a 9.39% increase on the expenditures. In these general support, instruction, and pupil transportation categories, those figures include salaries, benefits, supplies and materials, contracts, all expenditures associated with that function. If we look at it a different way and break down the same numbers by salaries, equipment, contracts, and supplies, or what we refer to as budget objects, you'll see pretty much the same numbers, with the largest increases coming in equipment. That's almost a 50% increase. In this budget, our equipment budget has always been about $500,000. We felt that that was not sufficient to replace a lot of the equipment and needs that we have in the district, so we have increased that to about almost $1 million, about $995,000. So you see an increase here of about $404,000. Contract supplies and materials, as well, or I should say contract supplies and services, contract services. That number has gone up about 28%. And as I mentioned last time, a lot of that is buildings and grounds and transportation, which are still being impacted by inflation and supply chain. The materials that we used to buy for $10 are now $32. And you just multiply that for tires and oils and parts and equipment and vans, and we've had to increase. Hopefully down the road, as things kind of tamper back down, we'll be able to kind of recoup some of that money that's in the budget now and repurpose it to some other areas. But that's why you see a big 28% increase there. Tuitions, private schools are up about 15%. That's due to volume of kids that are increasing and the tuition costs are increasing. BOCES costs are up $3.3 million. They're under the same parameters we are. Their administrative costs, supplies and materials, things that they're purchasing on our behalf have all increased as well. They pass that along to us. This was a unique slide that we put in for 23-24, just staffing adjustments. So with the increase in foundation aid, primarily in 23-24, as well as what we received over the last couple years, we did make adjustments not only this year but in prior years to our staffing. And for 23-24, we have a currently 45.8 FTEs recommended in the budget that are categorized under instructional program. And the state, per the three-part budget and the budget code structure that we need to follow, categorize instructional program as curriculum development, supervision, athletics, occupational education, psychological services, social work. They all fall under instructional program. And in that category, we've added almost 46 positions. Under general support, which is more in line with some of the more traditional items that you think about, B&G, buildings and grounds, human resources, planning department, BOCES, treasury, finance, we've added about 8.5 positions for a total of next year of just over 54 positions. So I also wanted to take a look, so what have we done over the last couple years, given the increase that we've had of $9 million, $15, $16 million, and then $19 million. And what have we done with those funds? And if you recall back on the foundation aid slide, said in those years from about 07, 08 through 14, 15, 15, 16, we were cutting positions for a number of years. We've been able to add many of those back. This was an attempt to show where we've added them and how many we've added. So positions get added in the budget two ways. One, during this time of the year, as we develop the budget, and recommendations are we need this position, we need that position, we're doing staffing to actual. During the budget development cycle, there are positions that we add. Then we're at this point in the year, and the board adopts, the budget is passed with our voters, the school year starts, more needs show up. And during the year, we add positions, and then the way they get added to the budget is when we do the rollover for the board in January or February, all those positions we added since the budget was passed are then captured in the rollover budget, but they aren't necessarily called out as additions for that year. That's what this is trying to do. So when we went from the 21-22, the green columns, from 21-22 to 22-23, we actually added almost 56 positions to the budget, with 45 of them being instruction, 6 of them in general support. And as we go develop the 22-23 budget, and during this year, as we've added positions, as needs have arose, they are now captured in the 23-24 recommended budget, and we've added 124 positions there. The total adds for the period from 21-22 to 23-24 is 174 positions, with 150, or about 87% of those positions, being in the instructional / program areas. And we wanted to call that out for everybody in terms of the 3-year period. And once we get past 23-24, we still yet need to see what the state is going to do with foundation aid after that, since they've given us all these major increases. Are they going to provide us with 0, 1%, 2%? Are they going to follow the formula? We're not sure. But we wanted to take this opportunity to kind of show everybody for this last 2 or 3 year period, we've added 174 positions, most of them being in instruction and program. So overall budget summary, $290.7 million budget. It's an increase of the budget of about almost $25 million. Over to the side, you'll see $19.1 million. Of the $25 million, $19.1 million is strictly due to foundation aid, and that is a 77% increase. 77% of that $25 million increase is strictly foundation aid. The budget increase is 9.39%. The levy, tax levy that we would charge the residents, goes to $122.3 million. It's an increase of $2.2 million, or 1.87% increase in the levy in the proposed budget. Our current tax rate for 22-23 school year was $24.84 per thousand. We are estimating for next year that rate would drop to $24.54, a drop of about 30 cents per thousand, or this should show negative a drop of 1.2% in the tax rate. How does that translate into a resident tax bill? So what I used here was $170,000 as the median house assessed value from last year. So I went back to last year. The median assessed value for a home in Greece was about 170. If your house was assessed at $170,000 in 22-23, and it remains at $170,000 for 23-24, you'll see on the right-hand side under percent or change, your tax bill should drop around $51, okay, from the previous year.
Shaler's.
What's that?
One night at Shaler's.
Right, or a pizza. A pizza these days, yeah, I don't even know if you could get a sheet for 51, but you come close. And what else is on the budget? We have one proposition this year. It's for bus replacement, 35 vehicles, 33 of those being buses, a combination of large buses and small buses, and 2 minivans, which we believe will still be difficult to get, but we're going to at least get the authorization for it. The estimated aggregate cost is almost $5 million for all 35 vehicles. It's a little bit more than we've done in past years, but we've done this intentionally with the whole cloud over electric buses, and where is that going to go over the next 12 or 18 months. So to kind of hedge our bet, we're going to buy some additional larger buses and not buy large buses the following year, and kind of let the dust settle on electric buses before we make a move stronger in one way or the other. We're going to use about $1.7 million of our reserve funds. We'll finance this over a 5-year period, and what that does is it adds no additional cost to the tax levy for this $5 million purchase of buses, because between the state aid we get and what we pull out of the reserve, the net cost to residents and the levy is zero.
So to close, this is just a reminder that we'll be voting on May 16th. We have one centralized location at our transportation center. As I mentioned, polls are open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. One of the things that we'll be working on is making sure that that entire lot is open for people. We actually had a great meeting this week where we've got all of that planned out. So we're excited to get people here and really just encourage people to get out to vote. A couple of key dates, just that you can see here. On April 18th, tonight, we would vote on the proposed budget. On the 25th, the budget book is available for public review. May 2nd, there will be an official budget public hearing. On the 16th is the annual vote, and we have a candidates night that's going to be April 24th at 7 p.m. So we'll update that and make sure that's on our website as well. And with that, I would just say thank you. This is a process, like I said, that is arduous. It's lengthy, and I think somebody said it really well the other day. Romeo acts like this is his money. And I say that in the kindest way, but every decision that we make is done very carefully and thoughtfully, considering the fact that this is taxpayer money. And we want to make sure that where we put it is making the most sense for our kids and is responsible. So we've taken a lot of time and effort with this, and we'd be happy to take any questions.
Questions? Thank you. Oh, sorry, Dr. Draywick.
Thank you.
Mike.
So my question is regarding the $19.1 million that we're getting additionally in foundation aid. One of the questions that has been, or comments that have kind of been going around the community is, you know, we should maybe consider stepping away from state funding. And I would like to know how that would impact our budget, because not only did I hear 19.1 increase in foundation aid, I also heard 91% of our budget is based on state aid. So could you elaborate on that, please?
So clarification, the 19, if we were to step away from state funding, it represents over 52 or 53% of our revenues. It would be devastating. That doesn't take into account grants that may be out there, supplementary grants, Title I, IDEA, supplementary grants like ARP, CARISA that we've gotten, but it makes up about 52-53% of our funding. The 91% is not the 91% of our revenues. It was 91% of the increase in the budget was because of foundation aid increase. But state aid or federal aid makes up about 52%, 53% of our revenues. It would crush us. It would be very difficult to do most or all of what we currently do.
Ms. Farah?
Yes, I just have one quick question. You had mentioned that we are going to be adding 2 school safety officers. These are not the same as school resource officers, correct? Am I understanding that?
Correct.
Okay.
So
thank you.
during 22-23, we've added 2 or 2.5 security officers, which are now showing up in 23-24. And that's in addition to, we'll renew the contract for the 2 armed security guards that we currently have as well.
Okay, thank you.
Vice President Moore?
Romeo, will you explain the tuition line and what tuitions we pay?
Sure. So there's the private, parochial, and charter schools. So any Greece residents who send their children to a private, parochial, or a charter school have that option and that right. Those kids attend, though we bus them to those schools. And during the year, we are billed a rate for those schools that we pay to the Aquinas or the charter schools in the area based on residency. And vice versa, we do the same with kids who may be attending charter schools elsewhere as well. So it's kind of a back and forth. But kids who, again, live in Greece but attend a private or a parochial or charter school elsewhere, we're the billing agent. We receive those bills and we have to pay tuition that is established by the state.
Mrs. Farmer?
We pay Aquinas tuition. We pay Aquinas?
Not for the Aquinas tuition, but some of the services like special
Okay.
education or some things that may come through.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Dr. Sherwick?
Board candidates night, meet the candidates night, is that going to be held here? And will it also be hybrid?
Are we doing hybrid? No. Okay. It's here, but it's in person.
And it will be on YouTube as well.
Is that what you were wondering as far as like a back and forth, like Zoom?
Just so folks could watch it.
Yeah, so it would be, and it'll be up, like, so you can go back to it afterwards, like our meetings.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Any other questions? Thank you. Moving on to item 4.02, the mental health update. Superintendent Groutman.
Yeah, so we have an incredible team in the house here. I would like to introduce and have Dr. Zaffitz and Dr. Baker come on up. They have a presentation to give us an update on the work that we've been doing. I will go on record as saying this has been one of the most difficult years that, well, I shouldn't say the most, it is the most difficult year that I've had in 30 years of education. And what has made it so difficult is really the mental health crisis that we are experiencing. And we're experiencing it with students, but we're also experiencing it with adults, our colleagues, and you could sort of go across the board. I'm very proud in Greece about the work that we've done with mental health and how robust our services are. I know we're barely scratching the surface of the need. So I say that with the utmost respect. I appreciate your unity tonight and you being here. And I know Christine and Mike are going to do a fabulous job of sharing about the work that you've been doing. So thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Good evening, everybody. Kathy pretty much said what I wanted to say in my introduction. But I'm so glad that the team is here to be recognized and to to hear the presentation this evening. I'll say the proof is in the pudding. I check in with Christine all the time. We work really closely together, and I will say that without fail, every one of our meetings goes over the allotted time because there's so much going on in the world of mental health and student services support. So thank you very much. I'll turn it over to Christine and Jim, and they'll take us through the presentation.
Good evening, everybody. I do wanted to just...
I'm sorry, Jim.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry. Mr. Jim
So,
Gardner.
Jim Gardner
Everybody.
is one of our district social workers that's on the SFAS team, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But to Kathy's point, we have given... We know that there's a mental health crisis for many reasons. It's tightly connected with behaviors that we might see, and we've talked a lot about that in the Code of Conduct presentations. But some other data points that we have is with our Youth Risk Behavior Survey that we gave about a year and a half ago at this point. And some of the data that came out of that for our own Greece secondary students is that 38% of our Greece high school students report 2 or more ACEs, which means an adverse childhood experience, which means that they have been exposed to some sort of abuse or have witnessed something that is traumatic in their lives, or have a parent that might be not making, choices that relate to substance abuse or some other mental health issues themselves. We also have from that data that 35% of our Greece middle school students self-reported that they have difficulty concentrating, focusing, or making decisions because of mental or emotional challenges. And 15% of our Greece high school students have considered suicide in the last year. And so that just speaks to the level of need from our own Greece students that speaks to home. A lot of times you see national surveys or something at the New York State level. These are our Greece kids. And so we do have a responsibility to make sure that we are being as responsive to that as possible. We also collect other data that's more resiliency-based with our social emotional screener that tells us the skills that we know if we can build up resiliency in the 5 competencies of self-management skills, self-awareness skills, that we can help to build up those skills on the other side to prevent more issues down the road. And so that's also, I just wanted to point out areas where we're measuring on the other, more of a growth-related mindset, and is also data that we take. So my goal tonight in presenting with everyone here as well and with Jim is to talk about the work that we've done as a department with roles and responsibilities. A lot of that budget increase that we just talked about is related to our department, and so it's really important to see how they're different and multifaceted in terms of what they're bringing to the table. We also have some general updates for you around other things within the mental health department from the district level, as well as our Peer Accountability Council pilot update that's happening at Arcadia High School. So specifically, we have a ton of structures and systems that we've built. I won't go into all of these, and this is certainly not an exhaustive list, but we want you to know that we have put structures and systems in place and continue to try to make them better and to improve upon them. So some of those might be more behavior-based supports, and others might be mental health-related supports, and some of them might be instructional in terms of mental health first aid that I'll talk about a little bit later, or some curriculum that we might do for prevention for students. And we can't do any of those structures and systems without our staffing. And so I mentioned before that we have made some increases in student services at the district level. If you're here as part of the mental health department or student services, could I just ask you to stand and just to show that you, thank you, guys. This department and everyone that's not here has worked incredibly hard. We have asked them to work differently, and I'll speak to that a little bit. Work hard to build more systems in response to some of the things that we're seeing in schools. So we've added things like a TCI, CPI trainer. We've added more prevention for SEL and equity TOSAs. We have a McKinney-Vento social worker that's helping with our students that are experiencing homelessness. We have 3 substance abuse prevention counselors in our department, 5 student family advocacy and support team members, which includes a district counselor, an MTSS coach, 2 district social workers, and a district psychologist, and that's a member that that Jim is on. We have 3 district behavior interventionists, 4 autism consultants, and then specifically here, we have 32 total social workers. In 2021, that number was only 13. And so that is really important. We primarily focused on special ed, self-contained programming, and we weren't doing anything outside of those self-contained programs. So that's a huge number to know that that lives in the budget. And what we see, a lot of our social workers are here tonight. 16 psychologists and 46 school counselors, which is in line with the ratio, very closely to the 1 to 250 ratio. I think what's also important to note is that school social workers also should be aligned to that ratio of 1 to 250. So we're not there yet, even though that number is a large increase. We are still not quite at that recommended ratio, and so people are working still really hard around that. We also have contracted services with Genesee Mental Health and Center for Youth.
So as Christine talked about, with adding all the additional people, what we didn't want to do was just add people and keep doing the same thing that was going on. So we tried to make a concerted effort to really capitalize on the specific skill set and training that each discipline has. So in the past, without the social workers, we required the psychologists and the counselors to act as a social worker and try to figure out how to support. So this overlapping circle model is really the idea that there's pieces of being a mental health staff that we're all going to do, but we're trying to actually allow the individual disciplines to do and focus the things that they've been trained in. So for example, the social workers have a training in understanding community resources and how to connect and partner and with families about what that unique barrier is, and then connecting into those liaisons. Because unfortunately, 32 social workers are not going to be able to support all the needs of the individual families. We have to rely on the community support with that as well. So what has been nice about this shift is that counselors have been doing it for a long time. So they had been picking up the slack, trying to do that. The psychologists were picking up wherever they could. This is what Christine is talking about as far as really trying to, that they've been doing a lot of change that's happened. So yes, bringing on people, but change is hard and difficult. So for the last year, we've been trying to say thank you for all those things that you've done. Now we're going to try to support you so you can do stuff a little bit differently, hopefully to be more efficient and strategic with it.
So some of those examples that we want to see, school counselors have been crisis interveners, they've been social workers, they've been teachers, they've been working in all of these realms, and so trying to get back to what our training is in as a former school counselor, that is Tier 1 with classroom lessons and instruction and prevention, and then more of Tier 2. And so there's obviously an overlap you see between the 3 circles and the roles. We are going to have to respond to needs. We are going to have to support students when a need arises, but really trying to make sure that we're not just living in the responsive mode, that we are preventing as well. And so those might be lessons around bullying prevention or other types of curriculum base that we have our school counseling curriculum sort of rooted in. And then school psychologist expertise is around 504 committee chairperson, IEP development and testing. They also can facilitate small groups or other interventions. A lot of our psychologists have been trained in FBA and BIP facilitation and really are strong in supporting our response to intervention process. And so they do have some overlap, but really unique roles that they bring in terms of a multidisciplinary team. And we really want to highlight their unique differences and really support that we need all of them in our system in order to sustain and support students. So we also have a lot to celebrate within our department with a lot of leadership and fantastic talent. Specifically, Jim Garner has presented 2 of these presentations. Using mental health teams' relationships to maximize student potential. He co-facilitated with Abby Tarana, our district counselor, and highlighted at the New York State Counseling Association conference exactly the presentation that we just talked about around the overlapping roles, which there was over, there's 100 people plus at the presentation and had a lot of questions around, and interest around the work that we were doing. Jim also co-authored Become Indispensable and Stay Relevant around trust. And they're currently looking at a book study around this in the social work department. And then we had Juana Okafor, who is a school counselor at Odyssey, do a TED Talk on knowing your value and aligning your career and purpose. So just highlighting the group of leaders that we also have in many other ways beyond the formal presentations that we have within our mental health department. I know that you just heard a lot about our partnerships with last week or 2 weeks ago for community schools, But why we reemphasized it here is that we talked about our own internal staff, and we can't still cover that all with what we have. We have a lot of outside partnerships that are more related to therapy and outpatient services and connections with outside providers. And so Genesee Mental Health is very important to us in that regard, that we are not therapists as school-based providers, and that our scope is around accessing school. And our outside therapist support is really to help them with outpatient mental health support, and they just are housed within our schools. So different roles that they're still playing as we're layering in supports. Center for Youth also plays a different role in terms of response and crisis response within our schools, as well as they have other school site coordinators, and then we also have our Peer Accountability Council that we're partnering with them. We also have a new counselor pilot app that's coming up for Athena High School that will be something we're excited about, where students at Athena High School will have access to a counselor that they can communicate with at any point in time, so that students have access even after hours to a counselor through this app. So that's something we're excited to see how that looks going forward, and if students are accessing that. So that starts within the next month or so, we hope.
As Kathy was talking about earlier about the partnership with NAS and the federal grant, so this grant is an opportunity to increase diverse mental health staff that are able to come into school. So it was an opportunity that NAS had found on their own and needed a school to partner with. And I think based on the work and the relationship they had with us, they reached out to us and said, is this something that you would be interested in partnering with us? Shocked me that we got it. I was amazed, given that I had a track record of 0. So like when this came through, I was like, look at this. This is what it feels like to get one. It's two-pronged, which I'm really excited about. So one part of it is giving students in high schools opportunities to better understand mental health and mental health careers. So that's going to be done by having access to a dual credit class where the students are going to be able to get credit through NAS for that class. So I'm excited for the exposure to that, which oftentimes I had the opportunity to sit with students at Odyssey who were exiting, and they would do kind of a mock interview with me. And so I was the person who would always talk about mental health careers. And a lot of students just don't understand it. So like, I'm not quite sure, something with people, and that was who I'd end up with. So I love the opportunity that students can kind of understand it a little bit more and have a better grasp of what they're looking for going into school. In addition, with the grant, it's actually going to pay the funding for students to be able to have it, I believe, for 10 students to get the credit. So they'll be at no cost for 10 of our students, which is exciting. The other piece that I'm excited about and that we've heard about already is that over the next 5 years, we're going to have 40 interns that are coming through our program. So we've committed to placement for 8 interns each year. That's going to be 6 social work interns and 2 art therapy interns. These social work interns, one of the adjustments and differences than in the past is these are advanced standing master's students who are looking for a career in school social work. So in the past, you can randomly get assigned a field placement. These are people who are looking to, at the end of that year, be eligible and gain employment in a school social work job. So with the grant, it's allowed some creativity, some funding to be able to do some things outside of the workday, outside of traditional support, to really, the hope being that they're here for a year, they are our best candidates coming forward as far as any openings that we may have. So I'm super excited for both of those things to come through. Over the break, one of the things that came up was Nazareth had reached out and said that Senator Schumer was doing a press conference to address the swatting incidents that occurred right before break and talk about increased FBI involvement and funding to make sure that they find the sources of those. He reached out to Nazareth because of this grant, saying one of the things that he recognizes and understands is that there is a traumatic impact to students and families and staff when these types of events that happen. And so yes, I'm looking for funding to support figuring out who did this and bring them to justice, but also this is the other side of it. We need to increase the people that are available to help support everybody involved so that we can get them in a better spot to move forward. So that was a nice opportunity to sit, and he was able to speak about that as a nice model to be able to use in other places.
All right, so a larger picture, just want you to know that we also have a trauma, illness, and grief team that a lot of mental health team members sit on at the district and building levels, in addition to other administrators and teachers. But already for this school year, we're responding to trauma, illness, and grief in various ways in terms of that might be grief with a loss or a major event that happens in a school where we need to send counselors to respond to help support whether it's students or staff with that event. So that team is active, and we continue to support with funding people to continue to get trained so that we have enough people to respond if the need arises. We also are sending counselors to BOCES for Monique Burr pre-K through 12 curriculum for teen safety and child safety matters. This was the pilot year. Other districts, most other area districts use this curriculum to meet their Aaron's Law requirement in terms of child abuse prevention, but it also covers substance abuse prevention, digital citizenship, bullying prevention, and self-harm and suicide prevention. And so this for teen safety matters. So this is definitely going to increase consistency across our department for those prevention efforts that we talked about. We also have Abby Tarano, who's mental health first aid, a trainer, and so has been able to offer various trainings throughout this school year, but then has also offered the first parent and community member training, and that was a huge success, and we hopefully will be able to offer more offerings like that going forward. We have our Grease Family Support Center that is fully ran by our own mental health team, and so they provide free short-term services within our district to families based on referrals that we generate, and we've had 72 referrals since last October. Our space is not super conducive right now without that other half of Elcott Road. So though I know that rate would be higher if we were able to take more families. We just have the reduced capacity at this moment. And so that has definitely been an essential part of a referral that we can do for free services for families to access. Our vaping intervention and marijuana intervention program continues from our substance abuse prevention team. And so that involves restorative practices and an education component for those offenders that have been caught with a vape or with marijuana for the first time, that they're going through an education program, getting connected with a positive adult. And so you'll see some numbers here around the numbers that are being referred to VIP and MIP for this school year, and the success rate of 96% reporting discontinuing vaping. And we're also tracking recidivism for that too, that they're not actually getting another offense within that through the system. So something that we're proud of and continually look to model after in other avenues. So one of those ways that we try to model that is, I mentioned it before, our partnership with Center for Youth over at Arcadia High School. We have students trained as jurors, and they sit before a jury of their peers when there is a long-term suspension, and they are giving them a sanction to repair the harm based on whatever the offense might be. So that might be that they need to go through some sort of anger management education program, and so they're getting some counseling sessions around that, and there might be a restorative mediation between the two students that might have engaged in a fight. And so our partnership with Center for Youth, we are able to support students and families through that process. And so we're really proud to say that 86% of those who have completed have not had another suspension. And so we are continuing to track that. This is the first year of implementation, and we do hope that we can expand that into Olympia for next school year and continue to see success as we watch that program move forward. There's so much more I could go on. It was really hard to, as Mike said, I always go over, but are there any questions for us?
Ms. Farmer?
How are they? Family, parents involved in some way with the vaping intervention and those kinds of things, or is it just directly with the kid?
So there's always a contact that's made with our substance abuse prevention counselor whenever, and with this counselor or administrator, because there is some type of infraction to our code of conduct when that happens. And so in order to engage in that process, parents are aware of that and sort of agree for connection with our substance abuse prevention counselors throughout the intervention.
So it's just their agreement. I'm just wondering if it would somehow be able to expand to pull in families too. So
yeah,
thank you.
Mr. Sawicki.
So a comment and a question, right? So first, congrats on the Nazareth grant. That is fantastic, right? I mean, just the funding and the support there, it's truly a win-win. Think win-win, right? And that'll lead to my next comment in a moment. But congratulations on that. That's fantastic news for all involved. So with that in mind, right, Leader in Me, right, and just how great that program is. My kids, I feel like I know all of the steps, and they come with songs and things like that. And I feel like that it's so great that we're getting there at the elementary level, right, and trying to set that foundation for the kids, right, so that as they move and have bigger kids, bigger problems, right, as they encounter at that next level. So I'll get to my question now, right? Some of those sobering statistics you shared at the start, right, just has me wonder, right, are we getting to those kids, right? And as I look at all the structures and systems we have in place, do we have any kind of stats that say, hey, we're touching 20% of the kids, right? And I'm not talking about Leader in Me, where that's kind of like it's a great program and touches everyone, right? But are we getting to those, specific touch points, and how do we measure that, or how do we ensure that we're getting to the right people?
It's a great question, and it's really multifaceted, but that's exactly the systems and structures I spoke about in the beginning that we're really trying, with our new roles and shifts, that we're trying to get more efficient with those things through our multi-tiered systems of support processes, so that we're looking at data, who's getting referrals for things, what does our SEL screener tell us, what are street level data telling us of concerns that are coming up from our staff members, and how are we making sure that we have systems to respond to groups of students and individual students to support them in whatever needs arise. So I will say we're trying to get more and more efficient in that, in terms of ensuring that that happens for as many kids as possible whenever a need is coming up for a child.
Thank you.
Dr. Traywick?
So the first thing is...
Microphone. Thank you.
So first, I'm really excited to see you guys leveraging technology, rolling out the counselor pilot. It's happening everywhere, in schools, outside of schools, where we are taking technology, realizing in places where we can't get human bodies. I guess, so my question with that is, the counselors that are going to be on the other side of this app, are they our folks, or, okay, so they are certified counselors from
all over
Okay.
the country. So they may not be based in New York State, but they're all, certified. They just might not be New York State licensed. So but they are all counselors, and available to assist students with their specified training.
Does anybody else have a question before Dr. Traywick goes again? All right.
Okay, question number two. How has the community schools model really supported the work? Like, we hear about community schools all the time, and today we're hearing about the great work that you all are doing as well. But I'd like to know how these two models work together.
Yeah, they work perfectly together, so it's fantastic. So Kelly Spadula and I talk all of the time. So there's a huge part of making sure in that overlapping role, so I can have a similar model that has the community schools piece and the mental health staff of the building, where we're going to do some similar things, but we're going to do it separate as well. So a good example in the past is when I was in a building, if I was trying to get support for families at holiday time to get information, I'm reaching out and getting $20 from Wegmans here, $20 there. I supported Kelly as she got hundreds of gifts for kids across all of the elementary schools that I, as an individual person, could have never pulled off. Like, you need a systems approach with a person who can spearhead all of those things. What's awesome about that is then I can support all the kids, right? Because now I'm not spending time writing letters and calling people and tracking them down to try to get together the $25. That is awesome. It's a great thing to be able to offer somebody, but I can now sit with those families that are struggling and need those additional supports. So what the community school staff really does is allow the mental health team to do the things they're really good at, instead of trying to figure out and navigate some other pieces.
Mr. Bonagario?
One of the really difficult things about mental health issues is you need participation from the people who are needing the help, right? How do we address situations where that may not be received or recognized?
So I think first and foremost, we're working to build trust so that we're able to do that. I think a lot of people who are resistant to help might have had negative experience where their trust might have been, there might have been areas where it led to them have mistrust. It was a negative experience. And so that is where we have outreach and try to build that so that we can be partnering with where there is more of an increased trust and willingness to engage because it hasn't, intervention or support hasn't always been positive for everyone, and so that's usually the first, step that an approach that we're working towards is just building that bridge. I don't know if you'd add anything else that I'm missing, but
All right, I have a few. Can you refresh us on Aaron's Law?
yep. So Aaron's Law is a legislative, New York State legislative bill that was passed where it requires us for students in grades kindergarten up through 8th grade to have lessons in child abuse prevention. And so there's a lot of curriculum that's available that's vetted and supported and evidence-based to reduce that, but teaching them signs of knowing how do you identify your trusted adults? How do you go and get help? How do you get away and make a move? How do you communicate if something happened to you? And so that's what this curriculum is about, is meeting that requirement that we teach. And this curriculum from Monique Burr is actually just one of the curriculums that's available to us in order to meet that requirement.
And that has a sexual abuse component
Yes.
to it.
Yep.
Very good. Let's see. And I don't know, maybe Stephanie can answer this one. How do our rates with both vape and marijuana? I mean, I forget what the numbers are. It's a third of the kids in the marijuana and roughly just over half successfully complete the vaping program. I mean, from a industry standard, what's the success rate normally if I enter a substance abuse program? What are the normal success rates?
That's a good question. I don't know. Steph Rago, you got that in the audience?
Sorry, Steph.
Okay, that's all right. Yeah, so it's interesting because the vaping intervention and the marijuana intervention programs that we have developed are considered early intervention, right? And so when we think about that, this would be students who, again, through the code of conduct, have a first-time offense, okay? We recognize that some students may be beyond that early intervention need, right? And so when we think about addictions in particular, we know that there are some kids who are considered addicted to substances at the age of 13, 14, 15, and so on. So these programs don't capture all the need that's out there, but at a school-based level, that's what we feel is appropriate. If we recognize that a student needs some additional services, that's when we lean on a lot of partners and other programs to be able to refer out.
Great, thank you.
Did that answer you?
It did.
Okay.
Perfect. And then just two more. On page 9, when you talk about the TIG team, can you give us, obviously not specifics, I mean, you were pretty generic in your description, but give us an example of an incident at the school level or the district level which would require TIG team intervention.
There may be a death of a student or a staff member, and so we first look at the circle of influence, around who might need support that's closest to the staff or student that may have passed, and make sure that we're supporting and interfacing with a single point of contact so that the family's not getting overwhelmed with communication, that we're working to sort of support the family and the staff or students who had relationships with those, having consistent messaging, making sure that people who are answering the phones know what to say when people are calling and asking questions. So it's a coordinated response with specific training to know, with checklists and guidance that kind of keep us measured, especially when emotions are high in a particular situation, is one example.
I'm going to tag on to that because the piece that you didn't mention is that team comes together, but the admin, so if you're at a school and you experience an event such as the death of a student or a staff member, you're still sort of the leader of that school, and yet you're also going through a very traumatic time. So what that TIG team really does is sort of take the load completely off of the administrator in terms of knowing the right moves, how to do things, and carrying. And unfortunately, we've dealt with it a lot, with a lot of different scenarios, but it's probably one of the best functioning groups and services that we can provide, and that is hugely helpful in those times of need.
Thank you. And then just the last question. We do an amazing amount of things. And do we incorporate, obviously staff members have issues as well, whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, whatever it may be. Beyond the mindfulness, are we doing things for our staff members as well in the district?
So I will say that that's always a topic of conversation. I think that our team, I'll tell you, they not only carry the weight of student needs on them, they do carry, our team carries that. That isn't what we're staffed for, right? We're staffed for student support, but I will tell you that I know that I'm looking at people who are supporting each other and supporting teams. But we do look for ways to support in other ways, like with the hiring and recruiting practice, how do we keep people here in terms of that? And then we also have EAP that we can refer people to. I would say that that's not something formally that our staff is doing outside of TIG responses and supporting adults in those ways, but that that are maybe a part of a practice, not necessarily a full system.
And the counselor app can be accessed by adults,
Oh,
correct?
yeah, that's a great point. The counselor app is for adults too, as part of the pilot, which I didn't mention.
Well, thank you very much. It was a great presentation. Thank you all for coming. Your support is well noted. Moving on to item 5.01, budget adoption. Can I have that moved to the table, please? Moved by Vice President Malor, seconded by Mr. Sawicki. We're going to do a roll call vote so people can explain their votes like we've done in the past. I'm going to start with Ms. Farah.
Before I give vote, I'm going to give comment. First and foremost, there are many wonderful things that the district is doing. At the beginning of every board meeting, we hear from AGSEP, we hear from GASA, we hear from the GTA. Terry Lynn and I look at ourselves, we're either in tears of laughter or tears of just absolute astonishment on what is going on with our students, where they're going, seeing how they have just grown into themselves. But we do need to question when things need to be questioned. As far as oversight goes, there are three main reasons we are here. One is to run a business, first and foremost. Second is to ensure everyone's physical safety, whether that's a teacher, a staff member, you're in transportation, or a student. Also, while providing academics, everything else becomes secondary. We have perfected secondary solutions, and we've heard several presentations. We just had one. But I feel as if we are not meeting the requirements and the standards that we need to provide. I feel that our restorative practices and the way we're doing social justice being implemented is not being done correctly. We need to work on that. We have heard consistently how teachers do not feel supported by their administration. We have consistent violations of policy and procedure that I was hoping to see in this upcoming budget, but I have failed to see so. We do talk about trust in our strategic plan, but I do believe that we could be doing much more with our shareholders' taxes and money, and for that, I am voting this down, no.
Very good. Ms. Flores, you're up.
As far as the budget goes, I am constantly in awe at the work that goes into making sure that money goes in the right directions, in the millions of directions that it needs to go. I sit up here on the board. I have a finance background. I do not have an education background, which is very similar to half of this board. I rely on the administration, the staff, the teachers, and all of the stakeholders of this district in order to understand what is necessary to run this district and what is needed. And I consistently hear from the administration the amount of work that they put in to reach out to stakeholders to understand what it is that is needed and where we can best use those funds. I have not come across a school district that has figured it out perfectly ever. I have not been able to find a school district who can offer the services that this district currently offers anywhere near our location right now. I also recognize that this district is the first step up in anybody who works in this district to say, do we have problems? Yep, we have a lot of them. There are a million things that are changing every year in order to find different ways to address the problems that are occurring in our district, but nothing is instantaneous like my kids want these days. They want the answer now, and they want it applied now, and they want to see the results and the solutions now. When we institute new programs and we look for ways to address the challenges that happen in our community, now is not the answer. It takes time to develop things, and it takes time to see the results, to see what's working and what's not working. But if we don't try, we will never know. And if we try and we pull it too quickly, we've just wasted the money, the time, the resources, the efforts. I really feel like the budget in this district is done extremely thoughtfully in a number of ways. And is there room for improvement? Sure. But as a Board of Education member that does not have an educational background, I rely on these people who have years and years and years of service and have looked at the 6 ways of Sunday to find the answers that we need to address the problems that we have. And the one thing that I have found with these people is they never give up. There's never an option for failure. There's always, you know what, we need to look at this and we need to do better. I think this budget that has been put together by this administration is a constant reminder about the ways that the people who work in this district and support this district and speak for this district constantly want to do better. For those reasons, I support this budget.
Thank you, Ms. Flores. Ms. Farmer, you're up.
Tammy, thank you. I wasn't expecting this, but having been here for a few years now and seeing the dedication that I have seen regarding Romeo and his staff and going around and trying to figure out the best case scenarios, and I continue to see success, even this year when we don't even have a state budget yet. So I applaud you, and I vote yes.
Vice President Moore.
I have an education background, and I am overwhelmed by the services we keep offering for students and staff, and I couldn't be prouder of being somewhat responsible for this budget. So yes, I agree with the budget, yes.
Dr. Trawick.
So I wasn't expecting this either. But I'm happy for the opportunity to make a statement. So, oftentimes we think when something is broken, the best thing to do is just tear it all apart and just scream, it's broken, and just point at it. I support this budget because although there are things that might be rattling around and there might be areas where we have cracks and dents and weaknesses, if we tear it all apart, what happens to our kids in the meantime? The adults can go in a room and argue it out and fight it out and figure out which blueprint works the best. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, the kids are not getting fed. So when I think about this budget, I think about us building an airplane in the air. It has to stay in the air for our kids' sake. We have to try our best. We have to do our best. We have to come to the table every day ready with solutions. And if we don't have solutions, then we need to seek the advice of those who are steeped in the practices, steeped in the work. Maybe it means going back to the trenches. We had an opportunity this weekend to participate in the Grease Family Fun Fest. It was fun, but it was also an opportunity to put eyes on our students and our families, to remind us why we do this work, to remind us why it is important to pass a budget, because they're little kids that are coming in not only to see mascots from their schools,
but that are expecting that loving adults will be there that have jobs, that are expecting that our buildings will be in good repair, that are expecting that there will be books that they can read and have resources. So I am saying yes, because we have children and families that are depending on us. And although we may not have it perfect, as long as each one of us come every day with our best, and your best is coming to the table with solutions, figuring out where those spaces are where you can make a difference. If you don't feel like you can make a difference on the dais up here, get on a committee, volunteer in a classroom, become a teacher, become a counselor. There are so many ways that you can make a difference, but if we stand on the sideline and complain about what's wrong, we will never get where we need to be. And again, while we're trying to figure it out, meanwhile, back at the ranch, the children are hungry. They need to be fed. So in essence of feeding the children, tonight I vote yes. There will be dinner, babies.
Thank you, Dr. Trewick. Mr. Bonagario.
Thank you. Our strategic plan speaks to several priorities. Academic achievement is one, a safe and welcoming environment is another, transparency and communication is another. I'll borrow that analogy of feeding our kids. From the school perspective, feeding them academics is critical. That is the reason that we're here. I have noted my concern regarding our proficiency rates in reading and math. They are not, I think it's fair to say, at anyone's satisfaction at this point. However, I see good reasons for optimism. I've seen the work that our curriculum teams are doing, and I'm optimistic about that. I see in this budget some investments, increased investments in science of reading. I think that is a critical direction. I'm glad to see that. And the investment in people to further that along. That's wonderful. I share Mrs. Farah's concern about our lack of support for teachers and for students in the classrooms, where we too often have disruption, which prevents students from learning when they want to learn, and teachers from teaching when they're trying to teach. So I acknowledge that there's increased resources to security. I'd love to see more of that. I think our mental health services that we're bringing to bear are critically important, but they're not sufficient. So I would hope that in the future we would see more of that. I think from an oversight perspective, the board needs to have more information so that we can make sensible judgments as we move forward. I think some of that is increased sharing of information that comes through surveys. I'm going to just show a quick picture. This is a survey summary of our teacher survey that was conducted in the fall. It's not a summary. We just recently received the underlying data. This is cherry-picked comments from staff. Wonderful to see, but we need data. It's critical from our perspective as people who are charged with oversight. I say all that, very, very aware of what we need to accomplish and supportive of our mission. With reservation in regard to particularly supporting our teachers and students, and especially in the area of safety. I know there have been, just this year, numerous teachers assaulted and a lot of students abused through the kinds of violence that we have in our classrooms. We need to address it. I'm supporting this budget. I look forward to seeing some improvement in those areas.
Mr. Sawicki.
So I appreciate the comments of all my colleagues, right? Always gives me something to think about. Dr. Treywick, I think, said it well, right? The airplane in the air, and we gotta like swap the seats out and like put new engines on it, because that's really what we're doing, right? And Ms. Farah as well, thinking about our budget as a business, right? And that's my day job too, right? Running a business, right? And I feel that, right? Because it's $260 million, right? That's a big chunk of change, right? And making sure that we're good stewards of that is important. But the mission of this business, right, is to make sure that we're educating our kids, right? And making sure that they're getting all the supports that we heard about this evening, right? And as my fellow board members mentioned already. For me, the data, right, really jumps off the page at me. I didn't see a slide this year that Romeo typically includes about our foundation aid, right? And the foundation aid owed to us in arrears for the last 20 years, it's probably the size of a Powerball jackpot at this point. Yeah, 300 million, sounds good, right? And if, when I look at slide 17 in the information that was provided to us, right, man, that was held flat for about a decade, right? And that's a decade of withheld services that we could have gotten a jump start on. And to me, what I see here, and COVID in some ways, and the attention to education and the needs, and the funding that came with that, and the realization that, hey, we got to do something to support our schools, this is just trying to pay back for sins of the past, in my view. So now we've set ourselves to hopefully a reasonable level. And then I look at the other stats that were shared in the budget presentation, right? English language learners, right? Up 1%, right? When you see 1%, you're like, okay, percent, right? That's like another 100 kids, right? That's 500 kids in our district who aren't thinking and processing in our native language, at least my native language. Same thing on special ed. 1% again, 1%, right? 1%, right? That's up to 14%. That's 1,400 kids in our district, right, who have special education needs in some shape or form and requires all the support systems around that to ensure that that kid is well educated and has the best public education experience imaginable. And the last piece for me too, right, is around that reduced and free lunch, right? And that's in many ways a proxy for the demographic change that I'm seeing in our district, right? And to jump up another 8 points, right, go to 64%, that's 6,400 kids, right? That when you likely look at their economic situation, right, they got other things that they're thinking about than just whether they're acing their math quiz or their spelling test on Friday morning. Right? And to me, that's another sobering fact. So with that, for all those reasons, right, I am, thankful that the foundation aid is back to where it needs to be, probably need more, and grateful to the district and Romeo and your extended team, right, and all parties who put input into this budget to ensure that we again stayed under the tax cap, by the way, right, against inflationary pressures. For all those reasons, I appreciate your stewardship, and I vote yes on this budget. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Zwicky. All right, I'm going to go on the last one. Some of my colleagues raised amazing points. The lack of foundation aid, as Mr. Zwicky so eloquently said, set this district back. We cut positions, we cut program, we cut things because we didn't have the funding. That wasn't helpful. It wasn't helpful to where we are today. When you look, was the number 300 million, give or take? $300 million we could have spent over the last 15 years that we didn't spend. That was a reading specialist. That was English language learners. That's, a host of things across this district that couldn't happen because we didn't have the funding. So for the job we've done, I'm truly appreciative. Nobody could handle a $300 million cut, I don't care what business you are, and be successful at the end of the day. I think we've been extremely successful. I look at, again, with the free and reduced lunch. When I started on Board of Education, our free and reduced lunch was in the single digits. We're 64% now. You think about that in this community. 90,000 people, 64% of them are living below the poverty level. That's astounding. and that's our kids. And I mean, I can guarantee you, I'm the only board member that's been in a lot of our families' homes. People that are having tough times, to see how some of these kids live. It's horrific. You would cry yourself to sleep at night if you saw some of where our kids come from. It's horrible. And schools now have become when I was a kid, and I'm dating myself, so I'll use Mr. Swicky, he's a little bit younger. Schools weren't the everything. Today, schools are the everything. You look at community schools. We're worrying about feeding our families over break. We're worrying that kids have clothes, that they have some type of a holiday season, so we're providing gifts, or we're providing Wegmans gift cards so they can eat over a holiday break. When I was in school, you went to school and you went home. That was it. There was no extras. There was no anything. We weren't providing social work. We weren't providing counseling. We weren't providing everything that we're providing today. I mean, our schools are the center of the community, and due to cuts at other government levels, the schools have had to pick up more and more of the weight across this region and across this state. And I'm super disappointed by the fact that since the COVID pandemic, schools and school boards have become the whipping boys of society. Everything's wrong in this country because of schools. It's teachers, it's school boards, it's administrators. The problem is our schools are the problem of every ill in society today. It's not true. I mean, schools are doing more than they've ever done. Are there areas for improvement? In every school district, there are areas for improvement. Are there things we could do better? 100% there are things we could do better. But what we're doing with mental health, what we're doing with SEL, that is hopefully impacting what we're seeing across the region and across the state when it comes to crime, when it comes to other things. Hopefully, we're making an impact to reduce some of that and help our communities. And the one thing I love about Greece Central, in my 15 years of doing this and doing budgets and being on the school board, is that this district, we're always looking to fix that next problem. We're always working. We always know we're not where we need to be, but we're working to get to that next level. We're working to make improvements. We find a need over here. Okay, let's put a team together. Let's figure out how we can get better, whether it's with ELA scores, whether it's with social emotional learning, whether it's with school attendance. We're all about trying to help our kids in this district, in this leadership team, and all of you guys in the audience, and all our teachers at home, and everybody that works in the school district, whether they're a bus driver or a custodian, they want to make Greece Central better. And that's the end, that's our job, to provide you guys the services. Am I disappointed this wasn't unanimous? 100%, I am. I mean, I think this district does amazing things, and I think every person in this room, whether you're a principal in a building, you're the new assistant superintendent HR, you're the new deputy superintendent, you're a building principal, whatever position you're in, everybody can look and say, we can get better here. Nobody's gonna say, oh, we got this, we're perfect. So I do, and I'm so thankful to everyone's work that went into presenting this budget. This budget's a lot of work. It's become a lot of work. This year was a little easier because, I mean, I remember years where we were cutting positions and you're looking at people in the room and you're not gonna be here and you're not gonna be here and you're not gonna be here. And that kind of sucked, I'm not gonna lie. You know, there's nothing good about cutting jobs, and especially jobs that we needed. We needed those teachers. We needed those people that we had to cut. And it was detrimental. It was detrimental in every facet of this organization. So now that the state is finally, and our legislature is finally funding us to where we should be funded, and hopefully continues to fund us. I mean, I do have reservations about the future, because supposedly all the fallback, or everything from COVID is gonna be better next year. So there's not gonna be any more fallout after next year. So I don't know. I'm hoping that really happens, but I'm not betting on it. But when that funding goes away, there's gonna be an impact. So not to diatribe any longer, I'm voting yes on this budget. I want to thank the entire team that put this budget together, Mr. Clilly, Superintendent Groutman, the entire cabinet, all of you in this room that have input into this budget. I want to thank you. You did right for our community, you do right for our students, and you do right for ourselves. Thank you all. And with that, it passes 7-1. Moving on to 5.02, can I just move the property tax update? Moved by Ms. Farmer, seconded by Mr. Swicky. Any comments, questions, concerns on a property tax report card? Seeing all those in favor? That passes 8-0. Moving on to the acceptance of the 22-23 internal audit report. Can I have somebody move that to the table, please? Moved by Mrs. Flores, second by Mr. Swicky. Any comments, questions, or concerns on that? Mr. Swicky, anything from your committee?
The audit committee did convene and reviewed on the March 20th meeting and reviewed and approved it unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Swicky. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? That passes 8-0. Moving on to anticipated bids. That's written information only. Anybody any questions? 6.02, quarterly reporting service contracts greater than 20,000 but less than 50,000. That's written information only. Anybody have any questions? Seeing none, moving on to the consent agenda. Can I have the consent agenda moved, please? Moved by Vice President Malloy, seconded by Dr. Trawick. Any comments, questions, or concerns on that? Mr. Bonnegorio.
I have a question regarding the budget transfers. There are several instances where I see the funds are coming from, well, in one case FICA, in two other cases retirement funds. I assume those are excess reserves.
They're not reserves, they're part of the operating budget. So within those operating lines, there's some built-in contingency. Should we unexpectedly see an increase in the rates that we don't anticipate. But they're not coming from a reserve fund as true reserve funds, they're within the operating.
So they won't impact?
They will not
okay.
impact the reserves, nor will they impact the operating budget. They're just transfer from one line to the other.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the consent? Mr. Bonnegorio.
On that same issue, one of the items receiving funds is security initiatives. Do we have information as to what that is? Can we have any insight on that?
Security initiatives. Where are you?
Number 3.
Oh, reason to support security initiatives. Gotcha. Oh, security, number 3. Gotcha.
Romeo, you can get back to me. You've had a lot on your mind. I appreciate that.
Anything else? I just want to thank GEF. They made $13,335.38 in donations. And 2 of those I really want to highlight. One was for our littles from English Village to be able to go to Springdale Farms, which I think is awesome. And the other one was for to Athena High School so they could buy Trojan T-shirts for their kids that can't afford them to wear on Fridays. So both those programs I think are outstanding. And then I'd like to thank the Athena Middle School Classroom for what they did for the SpongeBob musical, the Odyssey Extra Classroom Fund for what they did for Into the Woods, Olympia's Extra Classroom for the Snowball Dance DJ, and I'd like to give a special thanks to Kim Bolin, who donated several prom and graduation gowns. With that, all those in favor of the consent agenda? That passes 8-0. Can I have somebody move the resolution about marking period and report card dates, please? Moved by Mr. Sawicki, seconded by Mrs. Farmer. Comments, questions, concerns on that? Dr. Trawick.
So one of the questions that has come up for me is, since the secondary report cards are now all online, can a parent request to have the report card mailed?
Yes.
Okay.
If they need help with portal, give them my name.
Okay. I would just ask if you can still get a paper copy if you wanted one.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Clay?
Clarification for Mr. Bonnegorio on the board.
Can we,
Oh, once you're ready. Yes.
yep, can we just vote on this, and then we'll come back to that for a point of order. All those in favor of the marking period report card? That passes 8-0. Mr. Clay, your point of order.
Sorry about that, thank you. It's a combination of 2 items. One is the repurchase of
detection systems. Very good.
I didn't hear the last part of what you said.
Part of it is for the Yonder pouches, repurchase of Yonder pouches, and then the second is for the purchase of the open gate weapon systems towers that we're experimenting with this year for possible full implementation next year.
Can I just, are we going to, will that
Yep,
be?
there's going to be a discussion. We're going to have it's going to be a presentation in an upcoming meeting.
Okay, thanks.
You got it. All right, moving on. 10.01, can I have somebody move the board meeting dates for 23-24 to the table, please? Moved by Vice President Malloy, seconded by Dr. Trewick. Comments, questions, concerns on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? That passes 8-0. Can I have somebody move the reorg meeting date to the table, please? Moved by Ms. Farmer, seconded by Ms. Flores. Comments, questions, concerns on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? That passes 8-0. Moving on to the 23-24 Monroe Orleans BOCES 2 budget vote. Can I have somebody move that to the table, please? Moved by Mr. Bonagorio, seconded by Mr. Swicky. Any comments, questions, or concerns on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? That passes 8-0. And 2.0 or 10.04 to 23-24 Monroe Orleans BOCES 2 board candidates. Can I have somebody move that to the table, please? Moved by Mr. Sawicki, seconded by Mrs. Flores. Comments, questions, concerns on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? That passes 8-0. And with that, Mrs. Farmer, I'm going to give you the. Yep. I figured you sit next to him, you should have it down. All right, Ms. Farmer, Mr. Sawicki with the second. All those in favor? That passes 8-0. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.